1 minute ago, Mark Carney made a decision that will rewrite the future of North America. Donald Trump demanded access to Canada's freshwater reserves. The price tag? $2 trillion. Carney said no. This wasn't a polite diplomatic refusal. This was a hard line drawn in the Arctic ice. And the consequences are about to ripple through every facet of your daily life. Because this isn't about water. It's about power. It's about survival. And it's about the silent resource war that's been brewing for 2 decades while you were distracted by inflation and border disputes. The Pentagon has known since 2008 that freshwater scarcity would become the most destabilizing force in global security. They buried the report. Now that nightmare is manifesting in real time. And Canada just became the most valuable piece of real estate on Earth. Here's what they're not telling you. The data is clear, and this changes everything. Let's connect the dots they don't want you to see. In January 2025, the Colorado River hit historic lows. Lake Mead is at 27% capacity. The Hoover Dam is months away from becoming a monument instead of a power source. 30 million Americans depend on that water. Las Vegas, Phoenix, Los Angeles, all facing mandatory rationing within 18 months. But here's where it gets interesting. In December 2024, BlackRock and Vanguard quietly increased their holdings in Canadian infrastructure companies by 340%. Not tech, not energy. Infrastructure tied directly to water transportation and treatment facilities. They knew. Wall Street always knows first. Now look at Trump's Arctic policy from his first term. In 2019, he tried to buy Greenland. The media laughed it off as another eccentricity. But Greenland holds 10% of the world's freshwater reserves locked in ice. That wasn't a joke. That was reconnaissance. That was testing the boundaries of resource acquisition in the modern era. Fast forward to 2024, China signed a $900 million deal with Iceland for exclusive rights to glacial water export technology. Russia has been militarizing Siberian water sources since 2022, establishing military bases near Lake Baikal. The great game isn't about oil anymore, it's about H2O. The truth they are hiding is that every major power has been positioning for this moment, and Canada controls more accessible freshwater than any nation on Earth. The Great Lakes alone contain 21% of the world's surface freshwater supply. Add in the Yukon watersheds, the countless rivers flowing from the Rockies, and underground aquifers the size of European countries. Trump's demand wasn't impulsive, it was strategic, it was calculated, it was inevitable. But Carney's refusal just triggered a chain reaction that will redefine continental relations for the next century. Here's the second connection: agricultural collapse looming on the horizon. The American Southwest is dying, not metaphorically, literally dying from the inside out. California's Central Valley produces 1/3 of America's vegetables and 2/3 of its fruits and nuts. Groundwater depletion is happening at a rate of 2.5 billion gallons per day. That's not sustainable for another decade. Farmers are drilling wells 3,000 feet deep and still hitting dust. Ancient aquifers that took millennia to fill are being emptied in a single generation. Meanwhile, Canadian agricultural output has increased 47% since 2020. Why? Water security, pure and simple. Saskatchewan and Alberta are sitting on aquifer systems that could sustain current usage for 300 years. The Ogallala aquifer in America will be depleted by 2040. The Canadian prairies are just getting started. Trump's team understands basic math. If American agriculture fails, food prices will triple within 5 years. Social unrest becomes inevitable. Cities burn when people can't afford bread. Securing Canadian water isn't about convenience. It's about preventing domestic collapse on a scale not seen since the Great Depression. But Carney knows this leverage gives Canada unprecedented negotiating power, and that terrifies Washington more than any military threat ever could. Third connection: the energy trap nobody's discussing publicly. Freshwater isn't just for drinking and farming. It's the foundation of modern energy production in ways most people never consider. Nuclear power plants require massive amounts of cooling water. A single reactor uses up to 2.5 billion gallons annually. So do natural gas facilities. Even hydrogen production, the supposed clean energy future, is water-intensive beyond belief. The U.S. Department of Energy released a classified assessment in 2023 that projected freshwater demand for energy production would exceed supply in 17 states by 2030. That's just 5 years away. Canada's hydroelectric infrastructure produces 60% of its electricity. Zero carbon, maximum efficiency, all powered by abundant water flowing from endless northern rivers. Now picture this. Trump wants energy independence. He's campaigned on it for a decade, but you can't have energy independence without water independence. The two are inseparable in modern industrial civilization. And Canada just closed the door, locked it, threw away the key. This creates a paradox that energy analysts are only beginning to understand. The U.S. needs to transition away from fossil fuels to meet climate commitments and economic reality. But renewable energy infrastructure requires water security they don't have. Solar panel manufacturing needs ultra-pure water. Wind turbine production requires water-intensive metallurgy. Battery factories consume water at staggering rates. Carney didn't just refuse a transaction. He locked America into an energy dependency loop that could last decades and fundamentally alter the balance of continental power. Mark Carney isn't just Canada's Prime Minister. He's a former Goldman Sachs executive and ex-Bank of England governor who stabilized two G7 economies during crisis periods. This is a man who understands leverage at the molecular level, who sees financial warfare as a chess game played across decades. His refusal wasn't emotional. It was calculated with precision that would impress Machiavelli. Because Carney knows Trump's position is weaker than it appears on cable news. Let's examine the chessboard with clear eyes. Trump campaigned on America First economics, strong borders, better deals, economic nationalism. But his second term is inheriting structural problems that tariffs and tax cuts can't fix. The Colorado River Compact, signed in 1922, allocates water rights based on flow rates that no longer exist. The legal framework governing Western water is collapsing in real time. 7 states are in perpetual litigation over disappearing resources. Arizona, Nevada, and California are months away from mandatory 40% cuts in agricultural water use. The lawsuits will continue for decades. Trump needs a win, a big one, something that demonstrates decisive action on resource security that his base can understand and celebrate. Canada was supposed to be the easy target, a friendly neighbor, a historical ally, a nation that's never won a diplomatic confrontation with Washington. But Carney flipped the script entirely. Here's why. Canada is facing its own population crisis that keeps economists awake at night. Birth rates are below replacement level. Immigration can't fill the gap fast enough to maintain economic growth. But what Canada does have is space and resources. Vast territories with minimal population density. Forests that stretch for thousands of miles, water that flows endlessly from northern glaciers. If managed correctly, those assets become bargaining chips for the most valuable commodity of the 21st century: human capital, skilled workers, engineers, doctors, scientists. Carney's calculation is simple but brilliant. Keep the water, attract climate refugees from around the world, build a resource-based superpower while America struggles with scarcity and social division. It's a 20-year play, and it's absolutely brilliant in its cold logic. Now let's talk about the real power behind Trump's demand, the Pentagon and its strategic planning divisions. The Department of Defense has been wargaming freshwater conflict scenarios since 2007. Every simulation ends the same way: resource wars in North America by 2035. Military strategists understand that Canada's refusal creates a national security vulnerability that cannot be ignored. Because if America can't secure water through negotiation, eventually someone will suggest securing it through force. That sounds extreme, alarmist even. But history is brutally clear on this point. Water disputes have triggered armed conflict 926 times in the last 50 years. The Six-Day War in 1967 was fundamentally about control of the Jordan River headwaters. The Pentagon doesn't want military action against Canada. That would be catastrophic on every level, but they need contingency plans for every scenario, no matter how unthinkable. And those plans are being updated right now in classified briefing rooms across Virginia. Meanwhile, the European Union is watching this drama unfold with intense interest and growing alarm. Europe is experiencing its worst drought in 500 years. The Rhine River, critical for industrial transport, was unnavigable for 3 months in 2024. German factories shut down because barges couldn't deliver raw materials. If America and Canada enter a resource dispute, it sets a precedent that terrifies Brussels. Every water-rich nation can suddenly demand premium prices for something previously traded freely under friendly terms. Norway controls 55% of Europe's accessible freshwater reserves. What happens when Oslo starts making demands? When Stockholm decides Swedish water is a strategic asset? The entire framework of European cooperation could unravel over resource nationalism. China is watching too with eyes that never blink. They've invested $48 billion in Canadian real estate since 2015, much of it concentrated in British Columbia and Ontario, provinces with the highest water resources per capita. This isn't tourism. This isn't even just money laundering, though that's part of it. It's strategic positioning for a future where water determines national power. Beijing understands that food security requires water security, and their own water crisis is accelerating beyond any government's ability to manage. The Yellow River now runs dry before reaching the ocean 9 months out of every year. Northern China is depleting groundwater at catastrophic rates that geological surveys say are irreversible. If Canada becomes the global water broker, China wants influence over those decisions, and they're buying it property by property, investment by investment. Carney's refusal just increased Canada's geopolitical value by an order of magnitude. Every intelligence agency on Earth is recalculating their North America strategy right now. Now let's talk about your wallet and your family's future, because this decision will hit your bank account faster than you think, faster than inflation, faster than any policy change in recent memory. First impact, food prices about to explode. American agricultural output will decline 23% by 2028 if current water trends continue. That's not speculation from activists. That's USDA projection data based on aquifer depletion rates. When supply drops, prices explode. Basic economics. We're talking about staple goods that form the foundation of American diet. Wheat, corn, vegetables, beef and dairy that require water-intensive feed crops. Your grocery bill is about to become your second largest expense after housing. Budget accordingly or suffer the consequences. But here's the multiplier effect most people miss entirely. Food inflation doesn't just affect groceries. It cascades through every sector of the economy like a financial tsunami. Restaurants increase menu prices to maintain margins. Food service workers demand higher wages to afford basic sustenance. Transportation costs rise as logistics companies pass on expenses from fuel and maintenance. Within 18 months, you're looking at a 40% increase in food-related spending across the board. Every meal, every snack, every coffee shop visit. Second impact, real estate market's about to shift dramatically. Canada's housing market is about to go supernova in a way that makes previous bubbles look tame. When resource security becomes obvious to institutional investors, capital floods toward stability. Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. These cities will see property values increase 60% within 3 years. But here's what that means for Americans trying to build wealth. Cross-border property investment will spike as wealthy Americans buy Canadian real estate as a hedge against domestic instability. This is already happening quietly. This drives up prices for Canadians, creating political pressure on Carney's government. But it also creates a feedback loop that's nearly impossible to stop. As Canadian property values rise, pension funds and sovereign wealth funds increase their allocation to Canadian assets. This further drives demand in a self-reinforcing cycle. You're watching the birth of a new safe haven asset class in real time. The smart money is already moving. Third impact, energy costs about to crush household budgets. Without access to Canadian water for energy production, American utilities face a crisis they're not equipped to handle. Nuclear plants will need to reduce output during summer months when river temperatures exceed cooling thresholds. This already happens occasionally, but frequency will double by 2027. Natural gas facilities will face similar constraints. Even solar panel production requires water for manufacturing and cleaning. Wind turbine production demands water-intensive metallurgy. The result? Electricity prices will increase 35% in water-stressed regions within 5 years. That's a conservative estimate from energy analysts. Your air conditioning bill in Phoenix or Las Vegas is about to become unaffordable for middle-class families earning under $100,000 annually. But the economic impact goes deeper than immediate costs that show up on monthly bills. Fourth impact, industrial collapse and job losses. Semiconductor manufacturing requires ultra-pure water in quantities most people can't comprehend. So does pharmaceutical production, chemical processing, battery manufacturing for electric vehicles. The American Southwest hosts critical manufacturing hubs for all these industries. Billions in investment, hundreds of thousands of jobs. As water availability declines, companies face a binary choice: relocate or reduce output. There's no middle ground when production lines require specific water quantities. Intel's Arizona facility uses 15 million gallons of water daily. Where does that come from when Phoenix is rationing residential water to 4 days per week? We're looking at a manufacturing exodus over the next decade. Jobs will follow water north into Canada or overseas to regions with water security. Fifth impact, the insurance crisis nobody's prepared for. Property insurance in water-stressed regions is already becoming unavailable at any price. State Farm and Allstate have stopped writing new policies in parts of California, Arizona, and Nevada. But this is about to accelerate into a full-blown crisis that destroys household wealth. When Carney refused Trump's demand, he sent a signal that insurance actuaries understand perfectly. Canada will not be America's backup reservoir. American infrastructure stands alone. That means American water infrastructure must function independently, and actuaries know it can't sustain current population levels. Home values in the Southwest will decline 25% by 2030 as insurance costs make mortgages unsustainable for average buyers. Banks will stop lending in affected areas. Your home equity, your primary wealth storage vehicle, is under direct threat if you live in water-stressed regions. Sixth impact, municipal bankruptcy wave approaching. Cities like Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Tucson rely on federal water allocations that no longer match hydrological reality on the ground. As agricultural rights get prioritized because food production is essential to prevent famine, urban areas face devastating cuts in supply. When cities can't guarantee water service to residents and businesses, tax revenues collapse. People leave, businesses close, property values plummet, death spiral economics. We're looking at multiple municipal bankruptcies by 2029. Detroit was the preview. This will be the main event that reshapes American urban geography. Seventh impact, healthcare costs rising from water-related illness. As water quality declines in stressed regions, public health problems multiply. Kidney disease, contamination from desperate wells drilled too deep, dehydration-related emergency room visits. Your health insurance premiums will rise to cover increased utilization. Medicare and Medicaid costs will explode, forcing tax increases or benefit cuts. This is the hidden health crisis that follows water scarcity. Here's exactly what happens next. Mark these predictions and watch them unfold. Within 7 days, Trump will announce a North American Water Security Summit hosted in Washington with maximum media coverage. This is diplomatic theater designed for domestic consumption. The goal is to create public pressure on Carney through multilateral engagement and the appearance of reasonableness. Mexico will be invited. Central American nations too. The narrative will be continental cooperation for shared prosperity. But the real message is isolation. Trump wants to demonstrate that Canada is acting against broader regional interests and betraying hemispheric solidarity. Carney won't budge an inch, but the optics matter for both domestic audiences. Within 14 days, we'll see the first economic retaliation disguised as routine policy adjustment. It won't be called retaliation officially. It will be labeled trade policy adjustment or national security review. Expect tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber to triple overnight. Dairy import restrictions will tighten significantly. Energy exports from Canada will face enhanced environmental review that slows approvals to a crawl. None of this will be explicitly linked to the water refusal in official statements, but everyone will understand the connection perfectly. Canadian markets will wobble significantly. The Toronto Stock Exchange will drop 8% in a single week as investors price in escalating trade tensions. But Carney's polling numbers will rise domestically because Canadians overwhelmingly support keeping water rights domestic. He'll gain 12 points overnight. Within 21 days, you'll see the first major corporate movement and capital reallocation. A major American agricultural company, likely Cargill or ADM, will announce a strategic partnership with Canadian farms worth billions. This is the beginning of agricultural offshoring. Production will gradually shift north where water is abundant and reliable. American farmers will protest loudly. Farm state senators will demand federal intervention and subsidies to compete. But market forces are more powerful than politics. Capital follows resources with mathematical certainty. Within 30 days, expect a major policy announcement from California Governor Gavin Newsom that reshapes West Coast infrastructure. He'll propose a $50 billion desalination infrastructure project, the largest in American history, dozens of plants along the Pacific coast. Desalination is expensive, energy-intensive, produces brine waste that damages marine ecosystems, but it's becoming the only option for coastal population centers. This will trigger similar announcements from Arizona and Nevada, a desalination arms race along the Pacific coast as states scramble for solutions. Environmental groups will oppose it fiercely. Energy costs will make it economically questionable, but political necessity will override both concerns. Also within 30 days, the first official climate refugee statistics released by demographers. Researchers will start publishing data on American citizens relocating from the Southwest to the Great Lakes region in unprecedented numbers. This won't be called climate migration in official reports. It will be framed as lifestyle choices or cost of living adjustments to avoid panic. But the pattern will be unmistakable to anyone reading the data. People follow water, always have, always will. Property values in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota will spike 15% as Americans recognize the new geography of livability and opportunity. Finally, watch for China's next move on the global chessboard. Beijing will offer Canada a $30 billion infrastructure loan package specifically for water transportation and treatment technology. The terms will be favorable, almost suspiciously favorable. Low interest rates, long repayment timelines, minimal conditions, because China isn't buying infrastructure. They're buying influence over Canada's most valuable resource for the coming century. Carney will face a difficult choice with no good options: accept Chinese investment and risk American fury, or refuse and slow Canada's development trajectory. Either way, the geopolitical balance shifts further away from American dominance toward a multipolar, resource-based world order. The true cost of Carney's refusal isn't measured in dollars or euros or yuan. It's measured in the fundamental restructuring of North American power dynamics after a century of American dominance. For the first time in 100 years, Canada holds the strategic advantage over the United States in a critical resource sector that determines national survival. This isn't temporary. This isn't negotiable. Water scarcity is accelerating due to climate patterns beyond anyone's control. Climate patterns are shifting south toward permanent drought conditions that will define the rest of this century. Every year that passes makes Canada more valuable and America more desperate. That gap will widen, not narrow. Trump's $2 trillion offer will look cheap in retrospect, laughably cheap. Within a decade, access to Canadian water will be worth 10 times that amount, maybe 20 times. Maybe it becomes priceless. But Carney understands something crucial that Trump's negotiators missed. Resources aren't just economic assets to be traded. They're sovereignty, they're independence. They're the foundation of national power in the 21st century when technology and military might can be matched. By refusing this deal, Canada just announced its arrival as a true superpower on the global stage. Not through military might that can be challenged, not through technology that can be copied or stolen, through control of the one thing modern civilization cannot survive without, the one resource that has no substitute. Water is life, and Canada controls more of it than anyone else at precisely the moment when the world is running out. Your move, America. The clock is ticking, the aquifers are emptying, and Canada just said no. Now here's the question that should terrify policymakers in Washington, that should keep Pentagon strategists awake at night. If Canada won't sell water rights to the United States, who will they sell it to instead? China has cash and needs resources desperately. Europe faces crisis and has technology to trade. Developing nations will bid against each other for Canadian water exports. The 21st century belongs to whoever controls freshwater, and Mark Carney just demonstrated that Canada intends to be that power. Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me who you think Canada will partner with, because this decision changes everything.